This is one for all the American history buffs out there. In honor of Inauguration Day, we're planning on doing an hour and 45-minute show outside without coats on. But it's raining here in LA, and we don't want to be replaced by the John Tyler Report. So, the Trump Report Inauguration Day special starts now!
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin!
That's how divisive of a day it is. I had to make a joke from 160 years ago.
I thought I was a history buff, but apparently not, because that one went right over my wet head.
Scott, would you like to educate Chelsea and the listeners? This is fantastic.
Yes,
this is
well,
an amazing piece of American
William
history.
Henry Harrison did almost a 2-hour speech out in the rain back in 1841.
It actually snowed that day, and he wanted to show what a man he was.
It was like 34 degrees,
yeah.
so and it was and he sat up there for almost 2 hours, gave the longest inaugural speech, and caught pneumonia and died a month later, the very first president to die in office.
Yes.
How did I not know that?
Well,
John Tyler was
He died in office. He's not assassinated. He kind of assassinated himself,
yes.
in all honesty, because he was very firm. He's like, I'm not going to wear a coat. I'm a man. I'm a manly man. In any case, speaking of manly men, I'm your host, Christian Bladt. At Christian, why'd you laugh so hard at that, Chelsea? On Twitter at ChristianDMZ, joined by the lovely and talented Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia.
Hi. It's because if I didn't laugh, I'd be crying.
That's
Right.
true. Well, I think that could be true. And at the other end of the desk, another manly man, Scott Moore at SMan80. A little later, we'll have a friend of ours on the phone, but not just yet because we want to talk amongst ourselves for a bit. First and foremost, all of us here watched the inaugural.
So you didn't have to, America.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I did write that on my Facebook because there's a lot of people who didn't want to, and I was like, well, we're going to watch it, so
we
that you
suffered,
don't have
so
to.
you didn't have to.
You know,
Taking it for the team,
suffering's a
America.
relative
Some of us
term.
suffered.
And there's obviously so many thoughts to have about it, but I wanted to open it up to the two of you. Just sort of overall, succinct reactions. We'll get more in depth momentarily. Chelsea, ladies first, of course.
Well, I was most interested in seeing the people around Trump. I was looking to see what Hillary sort of looked like, the faces of the people there. That's what I was most interested in. And most of the time...
Just to see what her eyes look like when she's had to take a pound of Quaaludes to get through the day.
Yeah. I mean, I even watched the eyes of, like, the choir singers. I just was trying to get a
something
sense.
about this, yeah.
And they looked kind of dead behind the eyes, really. Most of them did. And I got the sense that, like, people were just there. I couldn't actually really see Hillary during the ceremony because her big...
I'm pretty sure
bodyguard was right in front of her and
they
blocking
knew how
the
to
camera
position
view.
her so that you didn't get a million
Which was
cutaways of her.
Really
Yeah.
smart. And Trump didn't make it a total shit show at all. Of course, gets like facts and history wrong, and that really annoys me.
And we'll get into the content of the speech in a moment. But what I'll say about it in just brief terms is that as a speech, as things that you're laying out, a lot of it is something that people are like, yes, that is what we need. Now, you can then talk about if you think he'll do it, but that's a separate issue.
It's not even about whether I think he'll do it. It's just the way he speaks, it's like he just doesn't know the way things work. He doesn't know the history. We'll get into that in a sec, but it was just like, I was really sad for people that are really like getting their hopes up. And we'll talk about the content, I guess, of the conversation, of the speech in a bit. But I mean, just overall, not impressed, but I also was, I guess, sort of impressed because it wasn't a total disaster.
Right. When your expectations are so low, you can't help
I was
but
expecting him to be loud and like, I will save you,
Now,
America,
you've seen
and there
him
wasn't
give
any of that.
presidential speeches before, though. His acceptance speech, after, on election night.
You just never know which version you're going to get.
Now, see, that's an interesting point because there are Trumps that we see who act very presidential, and you're like, well, maybe he could do the job. And then, then there's the one that can't help himself and talk about how bad new Celebrity Apprentice is.
Oh, I hope you're not talking about Ricky.
No. He doesn't like the new version of Celebrity Apprentice
But
hosted by
even though the ratings
Arnold.
are on par with the ratings when Trump left. So
he's comparing it to season one. Anyway,
of course.
when there were like literally 300 less channels. Anyway, Scott, your overall thoughts, and then we'll dive more into it.
I always enjoy the pomp and circumstance of the actual transfer, seeing that play out. But I thought overall it was very subdued, very sober.
Sober, what a good word.
Just there wasn't really that excitement.
Even the woos in the crowd were like,
yeah, it was just very kind
Speaking of sober, I thought you were both going to be day drinking, and I'm a professional, so I wasn't going
watched
to.
this
You already are. A couple of those mugs are filled with.
I'm just saying this is a
That's
brown
what.
liquid. Who knows what it is?
I watched this curled up in my bed. I can't be like laying there in my warm, cozy bed, downing alcohol and then drive in the rain. It's just
See, now that's
or even
very
Uber in the
responsible.
rain.
Yes,
And here's an
exactly.
important thing, though.
Feel
You, very vocally not a Trump fan, you know what you did today? You got out of bed. And there are people that you feel like are going to have a lot of
You
trouble
know what
getting out of
got
bed
me out
today.
of bed?
Especially when
was
it's rainy and cold,
Yeah, well,
and
that's
here in Los
especially- yeah,
Angeles, you're like,
exactly.
God,
the
I just want to
text
stay in bed.
convo amongst our group.
Yeah, which we'll summarize in a moment.
I was like, oh, fuck it, I got to get up. You know?
Yeah, we got a text from our friend Stephen Helmkamp, who used to do Trump versus Hillary with us, and sometimes does the Trump Report with us. We're getting some interesting comments in the chat room. My friend Jason Blair's in there. He says that the message boiled down to America's going to get ours now. Which I guess you could take either way. Like, it's time we get what's coming to us.
know, right?
Could actually be either way. We deserve things, or we deserve bad things to happen. I know the way that Jason means it is it's our turn to pay attention to ourselves for a little bit. America's going to get a little me time, which, again, is to the contents of the speech.
And shows
Kim K loved Michelle Obama's scowl and entire reaction. And Jason commented to that. She's back to not being proud of her country again. There were, of course, infamous comments from her very early on in the administration where she said for the first time she was proud of her country. She's been much more proud of her country since then, and I think that those were sort of angrier comments, but I understand his point.
Oh, this is really funny. Somebody thought that we were watching it midday. Actually, I live in LA, where
Yeah.
it was morning time.
Yes.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
before 9 a.m. before he was.
Right, and so
in.
for us here in beautiful, sunny, dry Los Angeles, the swearing in is at 9 a.m. I heard something on the radio, and I because I was actually driving around. I took my son to daycare before the actual speech, during some of the coverage, and he said, well, the swearing in will be at noon per the Constitution, and I'm like, no, per an amendment to the Constitution, because Inauguration Day used to be on March 4th.
March 4th. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was on January 20th if William Henry Harrison would have done a little bit better. But anyway, we've talked a lot about him today. One of the interesting things that
Maybe
I
it
had.
compares to Trump and how short his term will be. I don't know.
Well, he doesn't look like he caught pneumonia.
No.
So look, there were a lot of surreal moments today. I think for people who supported Trump and were impressed that it happened, it was surreal for them because they couldn't believe it. People who didn't support him find it surreal because, the guy who used to host not even Celebrity Apprentice, but he used to host The Regular Apprentice too. That's with regular people. So, it's very surreal. One of the most surreal things I saw when I was getting ready, I had CNN on upstairs, and and I was in the bathroom, and they had a split screen. President Obama was giving his speech, the hangar speech at the Andrews Air Force Base, which they always do, and they were covering. And they had a split screen, and now President Donald Trump, which I think is the first time I've said it on the show, President Trump was signing some papers, and they cut away from Obama speaking to show Trump signing. And now the networks actually didn't even show any, because I flipped around. This fascinated me, so I looked around, and they hadn't been showing it anyway on the broadcast networks. So that's basically what's happened. Thanks, Obama. We're done with you now. You can go ahead and speak to your hangar. We'll watch it later. Maybe we'll show you some highlights, but when he speaks, it's not that important. And it's just interesting because now he's Citizen Obama. And they did cover the helicopter takeoff, which is a lot less sad than the footage you see of Nixon when he had to leave. This is just like, oh, his time's up now. See you, Obama. Have fun. He's going out to Palm Springs this weekend, by the way. So let's not feel bad for Obama. He's going to have a great vacation. All right. So there's plenty of other things to talk about, but as we get to the content of my speech, I was watching my speech, his speech. My speech is coming at the end of the show, by the way.
We just have to go outside and stand in the rain for it.
Yeah. I was talking to my wife, and she pointed out that Trump really is a product of America. That's a very American story. It is a very specific kind of American story because President Obama is a great American story. Bill Clinton's is a lot closer. You know, we all know about Hope, Arkansas. We don't have to get into it. President George W. Bush, well, that's an American story, too. Well, you know, my dad was president. So it's interesting because these last few presidents are telling you, yeah, these are the different kinds of people who get elected. And it is a very calm and civil transfer of power that we have here. All right, so now we're handing over the keys for everything over to these people that don't agree with anything we agree with, but it's time. That's what the people wanted. We got to go.
Of the people wanted.
Sure, but
Less
enough.
than half
Okay,
of the people
enough
wanted.
people wanted.
in the
people.
states with the Electoral College.
See, if Chelsea like kind of walks around and she's like everyone else's footnotes, it's like some of the people wanted. Yeah, you know, 309 electoral votes felt that way. That's the key.
304.
304. Who did I give him that I shouldn't have? Did I give him Idaho or something? Anyway.
No.
So I don't know. I think it's interesting from that standpoint, but you know, I think that's probably not how everybody felt. We've talked about what your thoughts were as you're watching the speech. Let's talk a little bit about the contents
Oh, goody.
Ooh, yeah.
itself. So look, here's some things that I think that I specifically put in my notes. Things that we could probably all agree with, especially you, Chelsea, on this first
Ooh,
one.
let's see.
Power back to the people.
What? Nope. Can't agree with that.
So you don't think a small group of elected officials have reaped the benefits of government while the people bore the costs?
That part is
Yeah.
absolutely
So power
true.
back to the people.
But that part is not.
Doesn't that sound like something Bernie would say?
Who do you think? Look at the cabinet, or the people
The
Right.
soon to be. You're
Yes.
right. It's not the
Yes.
cabinet yet, but
So
yeah, you're right.
anybody who thinks that anything on that level is going,
going
to
to
change,
change, right.
has not been paying attention. And let's see who has donated to the Republican Congress and even the Democrats. Did you guys cover, in my absence, the
I had it in my notes, but you know what? Scott and
Thing.
I did a two-man show, and it was a lovely conversation.
was.
We ran out of time, like always.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, then I guess I get to put it in now.
You could talk about it
so about how,
briefly.
How last week there was a vote. Bernie brought an idea forward that we import prescription medication
Right.
from Canada that would really lower the cost of prescription medication. There were a dozen Republicans that supported it and 13 Democrats that voted against it, including people like Cory Booker, who are like a rising star in the Democratic Party. And it is thought to be, and I believe, that the choice to vote against it was because of the donor money that they got from big pharmaceutical companies. And
It
so
was very disappointing.
that is happening on both sides of the aisle. And so if you think that the power is now going to go back to the people as opposed to the people that funded the Congress, you're in for a rude awakening.
Right, but as a sentence to say, the idea of power back to the people, I'm surprised that you are fighting against the idea that the people could have more say in their government. Now, realistically,
Not with the Trump administration.
you
Do
feel
think
like they don't represent
So that's
them.
why I sat there thinking, wow, this guy knows what to say. That's how he got himself elected.
Sure.
He knows what to say, but he doesn't believe that, and we know he doesn't believe that because of the people he's put forth to run the cabinet. I mean, there are five of
and
them
he
are
and
like from
himself.
Goldman Sachs himself.
Right.
It's just,
Right.
you just got to scratch a little bit beneath the surface to understand what he really thinks. And people are buying this stuff.
Our friend Storage Yard resident in the chat room, you know what he just shouted out? Trump 2020. I want to move down to some other things on the list. Here's another one that I feel like you guys would agree with, but maybe I'm wrong. The establishment has protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Do you agree with that statement? Now, you don't
Yes.
have to agree that Trump's the guy who's going to undo it,
Yeah.
but do you agree with that? See,
Yes.
I was very specifically thinking about how we were going to be doing the show, and I was going to be sitting with the two of you. I was like, I feel like, all right, so we can agree that has happened. We
Right.
don't have to agree whether or not it will be undone. I like to be optimistic and hope and change.
You guys, there was a very wise woman that Oprah quotes a lot. That's why I know this.
Gail King,
Try again.
Maya Angelou.
Yes!
It's the only two I know. so.
Score. And you want to know the quote that Maya Angelou?
Please.
She says, when people show you who they are, believe them.
Okay.
The first time.
I mean, I do think that's a great quote
And
because
so this
it is true.
idea that he was like, all the words that came to mind are not appropriate right now. The idea that he is going to become transform himself into this regal presidential
He's gonna
noble
pivot, and he's going to
is just
Right.
wacky that people think that. It's not the way humans work. When in history has a D-bag came to mind, but I don't want to use that word. When in the history of mankind has somebody gone from bad to great because they were given more power?
Right, exactly. They're
Anybody?
given more power.
Is that,
Right.
Is that
Doesn't
that's
seem
not
to
a
work in a
thing.
good favor.
Granted, I only studied
I
psychology.
don't
and
think it's the
undergrad.
right answer. I just want to move on.
No,
How
but
about
he
how
could grow
about Jesus?
into the job.
Okay. You know,
I think I came up with one. Though.
When have egos shrank when given more power?
I don't think they do.
Exactly.
I
Okay.
think that's a valid point.
And someone who already has an incredibly inflated ego and loves
Wait, you
power.
think Donald Trump thinks highly of
I
himself?
know, right? I mean, it's crazy
No,
talk.
I mean, look,
to think
agree
that that's
to
going to
disagree,
change
my friend.
is not going to happen.
Here's the part that I did not think that you would agree with, that this is the day that people became the rulers of this nation again. That, the political party's not going to matter. This isn't a direct quote. That the people matter. The men and women will be forgotten no longer. Everyone is listening to you now. You probably disagree with that. You don't feel like everyone's listening to them now. Do you feel like people are being listened to a lot less than they were 24 hours ago?
Yeah, nothing has changed. I mean, there's a really great video on a website called represent.us that shows the influence of the public's opinion on the likelihood of any bill passing. And it is 30%, whether Americans love it or hate it, it's about 30% chance that it's going to pass. People with lobbyists and big money in politics, theirs looks like on the line, the chart that you would expect to see. When people don't really like it, it has a low chance of passing. And when people really show a lot of enthusiasm, it has a lot of chance of passing. But it's not going to change in this Trump administration.
So another thing I don't think you guys will agree with, do you feel like it's inaccurate to say that the wealth of our middle class has been ripped from their homes and redistributed across the entire world?
I am so glad you brought this one up.
I highlighted it. I have a lot of space around it to make sure that I see it because I thought you might be interested in that statement.
That one was one of my favorites.
Right.
Okay, so he skipped the... Okay, where do I start with this?
Like,
America has the most billionaires of all the countries, right? Yes, cool? Nobody
We
wants
have
to
the
object.
best billionaires.
true.
We have the best trillionaires.
Okay, so it is very funny that he's saying all the money went from the middle class to the rest of the world. Then how did all of our billionaires become so
And he
billionaire?
conveniently left those people out.
So, yeah,
his
it's-
I mean, they got
friends,
to keep their money. Come on.
you're right.
So him
The
and
middle
his
class didn't, but the billionaires get to keep
cohorts,
their money.
The 1/10 of the 1%, they got gypped in all this. Somehow the money jumped from the American middle class to the rest of the world and didn't at all stop through them. It went to them. It's in their bank accounts. They have it. Bank accounts all over the
All
place.
over the world, too, by the way.
But it's just
So they don't pay taxes.
amazing that he's like all the money went from the American middle class to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
It is just a complete fabrication.
It is mind-boggling
Total
that people
lie.
continue to fall for it when this person
False.
himself
What other? I'm trying to
has
think of the
lived off
words
of
that he
that.
uses. Completely fabricated.
wrong.
Wrong. Yeah, I like
Wrong.
that. Just. Who believes that? Who believes that?
Well, we're in a
How
post-factual
does
world.
anybody
As
believe
we've
that?
seen, we're in a post-factual world. Now, words don't matter anymore. He basically can say whatever he wants. My overall thoughts of the speech itself
Yes, please.
was very dark. Just like his
The New York
speech at
Times would agree
the,
with
at
you,
the
by the way.
Republican
That's how
National
they summarized
Convention,
it, yeah.
you would have felt like we were coming out of just this horrible period of time and talking about gangs and the American, what was it?
It stops now.
Yes, the not
The American,
carcass,
this American
drugs.
carnage
stops
right here and
it
right
stops
now.
right now. It was all
That's
just,
a good campaign line, though.
It is. It felt very much like he was still campaign mode.
I mean, he does kind of have to still keep running to get people behind him.
But he was still targeting that slim group of people that helped to elect him. And to me, it didn't. And I know it was totally different. And a lot of people that supported him were like, we don't want to hear the rosy rhetoric from Obama. We want someone that's going to, get results done and everything. So we don't care. Obviously, they don't care about what he says and everything else. But to me, as someone who you would think he would try to reach out to, maybe the rest of the people that did not vote for him, which is the majority of the people, he did not do a good job with that. It still felt very dark. It was still
No
targeting
attempt.
this very small group of people. There was no empathy. It just was really depressing and not at all what's really happening in this country. And I don't know. And it wasn't even backed up by we're going to do this and this and this, and we're going to bring everybody together. There was none of that. So I don't know. I think he's still continuing to double down on this approach.
And he's going to take it back, and he's going to make it great again, and we're going to be safe again, and we're going to be prosperous again.
He's going to wipe off ISIS off the face of the planet.
Which, by the way, if he does, that's
not possible.
I'm just saying if he does.
He's not. It is not possible.
Look, Inauguration Day is the day for fairy tales and dreams and rainbows and kittens.
That would not be something I would say.
And I was suckered into that in Obama's inauguration speech, because at that time, I didn't yet know how Washington worked. And now that I do, it's a whole different story.
Well, but I'm still going to say, from when he walked in the office to where, like the speech today would have been in more in place in 2009 when we were in that deep recession and people are losing jobs. That would have fit to me more, but we have come.
It would have been a good speech for Truman to give.
People are still not working, and the economy's still not working for some people. But compared to where we were 8 years ago to where we are now, that speech just did not fit in with the rest of society. It kind of reminded me of the 1920 Warren Harding. His was a little more flowery, but it was coming off of an 8-year Democrat president with Woodrow Wilson. It was very wonky.
And he also wore a coat, by the way.
And Warren Harding was the populist Republican that came in and with his conservative agenda and was like, it's all about America now. World War I was over. Let's focus on America and factories and all on us first and jobs. And that's the closest analog I can find.
That was interesting. He was like, we're going to have, everything's going to be made in America. And what was the other thing? Made in America and...
Well, we're going to protect our borders. It's a very, it's a very isolationist speech.
It was very isolationist, like 1921.
Which is not necessarily a model that you want to follow. Right? 1921 America is not...
As we saw what happened at the end of that decade with Republicans in power through that decade and what happened with the Great
It's not the blueprint you want to follow.
And I don't
think that that's what he's getting at, but
no.
It makes you think about, like, hey, there have been times where we're like, we're going to protect our borders, not other people's borders. We're going to worry about us. And look, you should worry about what's going on here. I don't mean that. But when you shun the rest of the world, then you start to, close yourself off a little too much.
That's what I was going to say, too. I think the rest of the world watching that speech would be very uncomfortable with that. And we're more of a global society now than ever before, and you can't just shut that down anymore. You have to learn how to work with the rest of the world. And I get what he was targeting, those same people that voted for him in the America First thing, and I get it, but it was so extreme that it would turn off a lot of people and a lot of global people around the world too.
So I have 2 points to make about inclusion. You mentioned that there could have been more inclusion. One of the things we're going to do in terms of inclusion for this show, Marissa, is we're going to get our friend Drexel on the phone. So we're going to do that. But at one point in the speech, Trump talked a little bit about inclusion, and he talked about white, black, or brown. That doesn't matter if you're white, black, or brown.
I was with
my wife, and I was like, oh, she's Chinese. If you don't know my wife, you're like, oh, I guess he didn't mean you.
Yeah, exactly. I was
so yellow
say that
didn't count. But interesting transition to the one and only Drexel Hurd on Twitter at Drexel Hurd. Now, Drexel, we were talking about a moment in the speech where President Trump, I'm sorry to have to say that to you, but I think somebody needs to pull the Band-Aid. President Trump said, that it doesn't matter whether you're white, black, or brown. And as everyone here knows, my wife is Chinese. So I was like, oh, he didn't say yellow. I'm so sorry, honey. You're not part of Trump's America. And I don't think she thought I was funny. But Drexel, first of all, welcome back to the Trump Report. Second of all, you did not watch, unless I'm mistaken, correct?
I did not. However, I did read the transcript.
So you have an understanding of the content of the speech, and I think that's actually interesting because it might take any emotion out of it if you just read it in sort of an analytical way. What we've been talking about is not whether or not you expect him to follow through on things, but in terms of a speech that you make to decree this is what needs to happen. Do you think it was, at least, I'm trying to put this in a term where I can get you to say yes, but do you think that it, at least on paper, sets out a vision that, were it to be followed, would be a good vision?
If you
or
didn't
is
know
it
facts.
Okay.
And history.
If you listen to what Chelsea says, you don't know facts or history.
Doesn't it sound great?
Well, first of all, to your point about him not saying yellow, I think the only yellow he knows of course, is the golden showers that happen in
Oh,
Russia.
nicely
look
played.
at
You went there
Drexel.
right away.
Dipping into the blue ink. And can we turn him up at all, Marissa? I'm not sure how well people can hear him. So
You really want to hear those jokes.
that was a great
really
joke.
want.
I can't put it on my reel now because it was too. No, I'm just teasing. Yeah, it's a great point though. By the way, my friend Jason Blair's in the chat room, and he wanted to know, Drexel, does the transcript write out the word huge with a Y, or does it say huge with an H?
Here's the thing. It says, as prepared for delivery, so I don't know what his actual delivery was like.
Okay.
So, but here's the thing. It reminded me of, just reading it, it reminded me of when I ran for class president in my sophomore year of high school, and I was listening to the other speeches. It did have that very sophomoric high school feel to it. It wasn't, as I'm sure you guys have talked about, it was a very
You talked
wasn't a
about
very
wiping
uplifting
ISIS off the
speech.
face of the planet in your speech?
No, the
It
other
wasn't-
students
No,
running
I said
talked
other
about that.
people's speech. I'm just talking about the level of the education level that it sounded like.
The complexity of the
it wasn't a
language, the
very
words. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it wasn't a very uplifting speech. As I'm sure you guys have said,
You didn't like the
I
word
wrote
carnage?
down-
You didn't feel like really inspired by that?
I didn't. It didn't sound like. I was like, what carnage? I don't know what's happened. What country he's been watching on TV.
Well, Drexel, Scott echoed your point, and also so did the New York Times, who said Donald Trump presented a dark vision of a nation afflicted by division and dislocation, exploited and forgotten, whereas the Washington Post said Trump sworn in, marking a transformative shift in the country's leadership. So the New York Times is really, you want to talk about doubling down and, not trying to reach out to the non-New York Times reader. I think they know who actually subscribes to the New York Times. But I think it's very easy to see it as a dark vision. I think that the other side of it would be people see these as dark times. I mean, not the dark times that perhaps befit a speech like this. This is not, Scott said earlier, this isn't right after 2008, that economy. He said that this speech would have been more fitting in 2009. Not that President Obama would give this speech, but just more of a hypothetical.
Right.
That condition maybe spoke more to it. But I get the impression that a lot of Americans do feel the way that he spoke about, obviously because of the apparently 304 electoral votes. I tried to give him 309 electoral votes earlier.
Scott slapped you down.
Yeah, Scott actually got up and smacked me, and I had to apologize because he did such a good job coloring in that map for us. But so go ahead.
I did think that the only part of the speech that I was like, okay, obviously maybe there's something here is the buy American, hire American.
Oh, that's what it was.
Hire American. Yeah.
And which I thought was
I can't
ironic.
wait for corporate America to start doing that. That's going to be hilarious when they start paying people $15 an hour to answer phones. What company is going to sign up to do this first?
And right after that, he said, we do not seek to impose our way of life on anyone, which is a clear departure from the Bush administration and his colleagues in the Republican Party. So, I just don't think he quite, clearly he wrote it. And
In Sharpie, which we saw.
Right. I'm sure he believes everything that he said. We will bring back our jobs when we've had 75 months of straight job growth, and we will bring back our borders as if our borders went somewhere, and we'll bring back our wealth as if he hasn't been wealthy, for his entire life, and we'll bring back we will bring back our dreams as if,
Think big, dream bigger.
We've been in a dream state for 8 years. So
we haven't been dreaming big enough. And I just want to get. Oh, go ahead. I'll let you finish your thoughts. Sorry, Drexel.
Oh, I was just going to say there was a lot of there was a couple of paragraphs of imagery, so I don't think he actually wrote those. When he was talking about Detroit, windswept
the windswept plains of Nebraska.
Yeah. That did catch my ear as well. You think that's a Kellyanne turn of phrase?
I think so. I don't know that he knew. I don't even think he knows what imagery is. So, or that he's been to the windswept plains of
Right.
Nebraska.
I don't think he knows where Nebraska is.
I don't think he knows where Nebraska is. No. And so for overall, I just think that it was a very short speech.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think it was in foreshadowing how long his presidency will be.
Ouch.
Yes.
At 10 a.m., because keeping in mind for our viewers and listeners that we're on the West Coast, so he was sworn in at 9 a.m. I did joke to my wife at 10 a.m. I kind of looked over at her and was like, if Hillary won, she'd still be talking right now. So it was nice. I think it was a 19-minute speech. Oh, by the way, if Obama got a third term, he'd still be talking now, almost 3 hours later. But just to give another opinion in the chat room, someone who I haven't seen before, 439 Tab, thanks for joining us. We appreciate that. Said he has a great speechwriter, and 439 Tab loved the speech. Nixon said, "Don't listen to what we say, watch what we do." Let's hope he does at least some of what the speech says. And look, I appreciate people who are having that positive outlook. It's very difficult for some people, possibly some people in the studio, maybe even some people on the phone. I don't know. I'm not naming any names. It might be difficult to try and look at it that way because you feel pretty confident that you know what he's going to do. But I at least appreciate that people are trying to see that silver lining.
I also wouldn't compare anything to Nixon, though. That would be the thing right there. If you
Only
don't want
Nixon
to
could go to
yourself
China,
to
and I don't think that Trump.
I do want to say
anything to him.
There is a good chance that he will do some good. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but on the whole, that people will be saved.
No, but honestly, Chelsea, the fact that you're willing to say it's possible is it says a lot about you, because there are people that are just like, no, it's not going to happen.
I'm thinking very specifically, like Ted Cruz wants to talk about term limits. Okay,
right.
I'm game.
Let's see that happen.
So there are a few things that is possible that can be done, but like a dangerous alcoholic isn't dangerous and drinking alcohol every single day. Those people still get stuff done sometimes. It's still,
like you say, the clock is right twice a day kind of thing. Like there's always a chance that something
I was trying to give it a slightly different variation on it. But it's exactly that idea.
Right.
So it's not that everything will be terrible, because I know what's going to happen is that he's going to do one good thing and everybody's going to be like, see, Chelsea, he's the greatest of all time. No.
Storage yard resident will be like, I told you that this was going to happen.
And so I don't want it to be on the record that I said it was going to be terrible all day, every day.
No. You have an expectation that it will not be a good 4 years, but you think that some good could come of it. I think that if you just think back to 16 scant years ago when President Bush was sworn in, there was a lot of that same talk. Of course, you can isolate things that did not go well, things that shouldn't have happened. I'm not even talking about 9/11. I'm talking about wars and things.
And the whole second term.
Sure,
and,
but what I'm saying is you can isolate. Every day he didn't sit in that chair and destroy the country. Things happened. The wheels kept turning. The country continued. And to actually bring it back to 9/11, that's not an easy thing to navigate. Getting America. You want to talk about making America, I don't want to use the word great again, but making America function again after that, it was no easy task.
I do want to say that when Trump said, today we're not going to impose our way of life on other people, I do appreciate that. And I hope that he does not continue in Obama's footsteps of dropping, I think, if I'm going to get this right, 26,000 bombs. And
it's a lot of bombs.
We are currently right now, the last that I checked, bombing seven countries. And so if he will put a stop to that, he may even be a hero for a day in my eye.
I think he's going to cut that list down by 6 and just bomb Mexico. I'm sorry, Drexel, I spoke over you. What were you saying?
I was just going to say I wouldn't hold my breath on that, Chelsea. I think the Republicans are going to increase the amount of military firepower around the world.
They already want to increase military spending.
I wouldn't hold my breath on that.
Yeah.
But I also want to agree with Chelsea on which hasn't happened often in the past few weeks. In the sense that I do think that that Donald Trump will. I had to catch myself. I do think that there's an opportunity for him to want to do great things. I just don't think that. I don't think it's less him, and it's more the congressional Republicans that he has to work with.
That is
because
gonna
we've
be
already
interesting.
seen because we've already seen the policies that they are interested in. It's not necessarily that he doesn't want. He wants to bring, like, in his head, he's so simple that he wants to do, like, he wants to bring back jobs. Yeah, everybody wants to do that. Yeah, he wants to build, he wants to have an infrastructure package. Well, yeah, that's what Democrats have been working on for years, but Republicans don't want that to happen. Yeah, he wants to, this America First thing is something that we've all been talking about, whatever. But I don't think that congressional Republicans are going to, they will keep him from being what he thinks he wants to be. It won't necessarily be him being the bad guy at the end of the day. I think that there are worse Republicans legislatures than there are him, because he is so simple-minded.
Right, and I kind of think what Christian what you were saying earlier about things happen, like things are going to happen, and they're going to have to react to them, and that's going to be how is he going to react to things that happen in the next.
There's going to be hurricanes that need relief.
Right,
there's going to be bills that get signed. There's going to be things that have to function.
He's going to have to react to that are going to be different than what a lot of people come into office thinking. A lot of presidents thinking that they have this agenda they're going to lay out, and like you saw with George W. Bush, that was completely changed after 9/11, only 9 months into his presidency, and the entire trajectory shifted. And President Obama came in with an incredibly bad economy and had to work on that and change it. So a lot of people's ideals and things get shifted as priorities change and things happen,
Can
and
I
you have to react to
respond
them.
I
to
don't
Jason's
want to talk
comment?
about that because it'll take up all the rest of our
Okay.
time. So I will let you respond to it, but I will give you 1 minute to respond to it, because as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, Chelsea can talk the rest of the show about that.
I can't see very well. My eyes must be getting old. I can barely read it.
I know what it is. So just you can address it quickly, but I that's such a divisive issue. Do you want me to read his comment?
Yeah,
because
because
I have
it's
it in
gone.
front of me.
See it.
Yeah.
So Jason Blair in the chat room says, not imposing our way of life on other people, like forcing people with religious objections for paying for the abortions of others. So very divisive issue. I don't want to spend the rest of the show talking about it, but I would like to let you respond to it.
But we all put money towards things that we don't agree with. My tax dollars pay for the military and have helped support wars and killing people, and I don't agree with that at all. My tax dollars have gone to corporate subsidies, which I do not agree with at all. But you still pay them, and you have to, in living in a society, you're going to put money in a pot for things that other people want and need that you don't agree with. But that's sort of
But see,
the name
that's
of
what
the
I'm saying,
game.
and that goes the opposite way, because people that are not subscribing to someone's religion should not be forced upon their way of thinking because someone's religious inclinations are telling them they can't have an abortion or they can't be married to whoever they love because of their. So it's a two-way street. It works both ways.
I'm so willing to restrict abortion if Republicans will agree to pass out birth control like Tic Tacs.
Well, there you go.
How is that a
See?
fair
I know.
Now that was a
It's like-
succinct answer, and I appreciate that. Also,
But
in
it's
the
a
chat
two-way
room,
street, and that needs to be remembered.
in the chat
Not everyone
room,
believes in those religions.
Ninja Fisher 391 says, "Hi, I'm in school. First of all, Ninja Fisher, stay in school.
And
Second of all,
actually,
you're getting a much better education
what I was
watching
gonna
us
say.
than whether you have a social justice warrior teacher or you have somebody that teaches from the hymnal versus a textbook. Whichever. I feel like you're getting a better education from us. Drexel, before we let you go and get back to work, making America great again. No, but getting back to work, where you're making yourself wealthy again. Give us some final thoughts about today and what you think what your expectations are for not the next 4 years, but let's say the
next week.
the next 100 days.
Well, I think today was bittersweet. I actually rode in this morning, very clichély, listening to One Last Time from Hamilton. Not watching the inauguration, but thinking of the past 8 years and President Obama. And then I said that the only thing that I would watch today was President Obama and the First Lady leaving on Marine One. And I did that. So I think today was for me, less about Donald Trump and more about President Obama and ending his term, his 2 terms. So I'm not thinking about Donald Trump today. I probably won't be thinking about Donald Trump at least for the next few days, and because he's going on vacation. So why should I think about it?
You do realize, of course, he's going to be very difficult to ignore, not necessarily during the weekend, but I think there'll be a point where he'll be noticed, and but I appreciate that approach.
Obviously, there's a lot of time to kind of analyze what congressional Republicans and the Trump administration are going to be doing over the next 100 days. But like I said, we've already seen what kind of legislation the Republicans are going to be putting out, and I think that he is going to be a rubber stamp to them. They won't be a rubber stamp to him. So,
ooh, that's interesting.
And that's
I don't know. I think there might be something that Congress might send him that he's going to be like, nope. So
I think that he, I think that they have done what they need to do to put his appointments, his cabinet appointment nominations through very quickly. And I think that was a small price to pay. So he wants to be surrounded by the people that he likes, and in return, Congress gets the legislation that they want signed.
Sounds fair, but I don't think he is fair-minded, if that makes sense.
Well, Drexel, to leave you with
simple-minded, yes.
To leave you with one final comment from the chat, Jordan Vance, who seems to be a Trump supporter, but he says, "I wish he would stop tweeting so much," which I think, whether you support him or you oppose him, I think everybody agrees, like, yeah, there's a lot of time spent crafting a tweet to make sure that it fits in 140 characters and thinking that that's the way to express yourself. I don't know, just save it up for the press conference like most presidents do. But
well, he did have to relinquish his personal phone yesterday. So
wow.
Yep.
Well, I remember that Obama was so long ago that he wanted to keep his BlackBerry, which is sounds so quaint now. But I do remember, you have to give over the phone. It's like, nope.
Is this true? Kim K says that the government website covering the climate change and LGBT pages have been removed already?
Now that's interesting.
No, hold on. I did want to address that real quick.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
I've had people text me about that already, and I'm like, everybody calm down. The transitional website, if you go to the archives of the ObamaWhiteHouse.gov, all of those pages are still there right now.
Right.
If you look at any new senator page, it's a shell page. All they have right now are bios on it. They haven't even filled in any other pages, really. So I would give it at least 3 weeks before they get a full website up, and then talk about what they have.
I agree with that.
That's
yes.
a good point.
And that's what I was going to add.
I think to Kim's point, it's good that people notice that, but let's not overreact.
Right. They have to get it.
Look at Drexel Hurd being the voice of reason.
I know, right? No, I was going to bring up that point too. That it takes a while to get it all uploaded and switched over. But it was alarming to see that originally.
I wonder if it's going to be like gold trim. Really.
Tacky ass gold trim.
Well, Drexel, we appreciate you taking some time out of your busy rainy day and joining us here.
Los Angeles was crying.
Yes, it is.
Well, if you listen, there was a pastor that spoke after Trump's speech and said, it started raining when you spoke, and we say
Franklin Graham, wasn't it?
Yeah, we say that the rain is God giving His blessing, and look. If God is able to provide a blessing to help an administration, we will probably see a lot of days of very heavy rains.
We could use all the help we could get.
Yeah, we could all use it. But in any case, Drexel, the Political Culture is Tuesdays at 6 Pacific, correct, on BHL?
We'll be back. We're going to be back on January 31st.
Oh, so I'm on the first show.
Well, Chelsea will be there.
This is our second episode, but we will have 2 DNC chair candidates.
This is going to be good.
Great.
Skyping in, so you guys will have to check that out.
Yeah, we will. And Chelsea will be pulling double duty then. Anyway, thanks so much, Drexel, at Drexel Hurd. We appreciate your time as always.
Bye-bye.
Always great to hear from Drexel. And look, I like that he's like, it's not a good day. But here's the thing. He read the speech. He's like, I don't want to watch it, but I do want to know what's going on. Back to the chat room, Jason Blair said the next 100 days, Obamacare reform will be bogged down. The wall will be bogged down. Tax reform will be a done deal. I don't know. I feel like everything will be bogged down. What we alluded to earlier, by the way, is that we got a text from our friend Stephen Helmkamp, who is not on the Trump train, but I think that when the Trump train is pulled into a station, he'll get in it and he'll sit there and he'll be like, this is a pretty comfy chair. And then when the whistle blows, he's like, you know what, maybe I'll get on at the next stop. He's still waiting. He said it was a very nice, great ceremony. History! Exclamation point. And to which Scott said, history that a moron is president. That'll just let you know what the show off air is like. Yeah.
I'm like, oh God, don't keep reading.
No, I'm just taking one.
Okay, good.
Because that's sort of a humorous summary of that. In any case, as the time starts to wind down, we only have about 5 more minutes. Just some final thoughts. You know, as I said, Drexel did not watch. He read, which I think that's fine. That's a choice. And look, every American has the choice if they don't want to watch whichever president. There are plenty of Americans that did not want to see President Obama speak.
Can we talk about Obama for a quick second right now?
A quick second? Yes, you absolutely can.
Okay, so he never took our guns away. Can we all agree with that? He never came after.
I don't
to
have
take
any
our
guns, but I understand your point.
I don't either. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't
and
either.
then
Scott's like, I got
he
a
never
few.
converted us to Sharia law.
No, it's a good point. That has not happened.
What else? What does everybody?
He was born in the United States.
But
which
Well,
at this
just
point, it
casually
doesn't matter
mentioned.
It's like-
anymore. Yeah.
I'm just saying
so
that was
all
the whole
those
thing.
things that like people were so convinced he was
Yes.
going to do.
Well,
It didn't
let's-
happen. Can we
and-
all
and
acknowledge?
I can certainly acknowledge that. And I would like to say that I like to think that maybe we're not going to have the wall. Maybe we're not going to round up. You know, these are things that he said versus things that people were afraid of. I like to look at this from a positive standpoint, but we do only have 3 minutes left.
Will we talk about the Women's March?
We can.
Yes.
It's interesting because
I will be marching from abroad, from Guatemala.
from Guatemala, because you're leaving like today.
Yep.
Yeah.
Have fun at the airport. With all the rain.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all right. Well, so, and you can tell us about that in a few
I
weeks.
want to know about how
that'd
that's going to be
interesting hear.
outside
I
the
know
country.
plenty of people who are marching here in
Yes,
Los
I'm gonna
Angeles
be as
where I'm
well.
told it's not going to rain tomorrow,
No,
but
it's gonna
every
rain
other
Sunday.
day the rest of our lives
Yes.
it's going to rain. So
Their sun is going to come out for all those people that want to protest, which is
Yeah.
perfect.
and Scott
appropriate.
will sing the song from Annie. The sun will come out tomorrow as soon as we wrap here. But back to my point, Drexel's decision not to watch. I think, for me personally, it's an important thing to see. Sure, you don't want to watch, you don't have to. Now, I did have the thought that people who compare Trump to Hitler, you would think that they wouldn't be so quick to say, well, I'm just going to ignore it and hope it goes away. Because you would think, if you're going to extend that metaphor, there were probably a lot of people who said, Nein, Friedrich, I don't want to watch the new Führer. I don't like him. Let's watch Vanderpump Rules instead. So, if you're opposed to the president, you don't have to watch his speeches. You don't have to follow him on Twitter. You don't have to like him. But you should keep yourself informed. Don't put your head in the sand.
Yes.
Don't try and run
Right.
away from
Yes.
it. And if you
Say
are,
that again.
if you're optimistic about the Trump administration, great. Be optimistic. Hope that what he said today is, as the guy in the chat room said, just hope that he does some of it. And everybody will be happy and informed. And
I don't know if
obviously-
everyone's going to be happy
No.
or informed. 'Cause clearly, there are a lot of people that are not informed.
But if you
Happy
keep
and
just
informed, at least
factual
for the
world.
hour that you join us every week.
exactly the best way to do that as we wrap up will be to catch the Trump Report Tuesdays, 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. We're, of course, at Trump Report ABTV on Twitter. Make sure that you follow us there. Like us on YouTube, comment on YouTube, and of course rate us on iTunes. For the invisible Drexel Hurd at Drexel Hurd, Scott Moore at SMan88, Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia. I'm Christian Bladt at Christian DMZ, and we will see you next Tuesday. We'll be back on our regular night, Tuesday, 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern, on the Trump Report. Thanks so much, everybody.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later!
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.